A man named Michael McEwen spent 8 hours in a bedroom closet with his wife, 2 terriers, and 3 parrots, while floodwater raged through their home in Waialua. He couldn't open the door. The current was too strong. When daylight finally came, he flagged down a fire truck driving down his road, and rescuers tied a rope to the tree outside his bedroom window so the family could pull themselves out through chest-high water. And here's the thing. He was one of the lucky ones. I'm Tyler, and this is Crisis Alert Live. Comment down below where in the world you're watching from, because today we're talking about something that most people outside Hawaii still don't fully understand. What really happened on Oahu's North Shore on March 20th, 2026. Why a 120-year-old dam nearly took 2,500 lives with it, and who has been sitting on warnings about this dam since 1978. Hawaii's governor, Josh Green, called it the state's worst flooding in more than 20 years. 2 Kona low storms hit the islands roughly a week apart. The first beginning around March 10th and running through March 16th. The second arriving on March 19th. By the time the second storm arrived, the ground had nothing left to give. A National Weather Service meteorologist put it plainly. There's no room left to absorb any more rain. 8 to 12 inches fell on parts of Oahu overnight, on already saturated land, in a matter of hours. What happened next on the North Shore was catastrophic. Raging water lifted entire homes off their foundations. Cars floated out of driveways. Thick, reddish volcanic mud coated floors, walls, and kitchen counters. Emergency sirens screamed across Halaiwa and Waialua in the dark, telling residents to leave immediately, on roads that were already underwater. Evacuation orders covered 5,500 people north of Honolulu. The National Guard waded through waist-deep water to reach stranded drivers. The Coast Guard flew helicopter crews over the North Shore. Firefighters on jet skis pulled people from the current. More than 230 people were rescued. Around 10 of them were taken to hospital for hypothermia. Some residents fled on surfboards. One group of 72 children and adults at a spring break youth camp on Oahu's west coast had to be airlifted out entirely. And right in the middle of all of it, sitting 17 miles northwest of Honolulu, a 120-year-old earthen dam was filling toward its breaking point. The Wahiawa Dam holds back Lake Wilson, forming a reservoir that can contain up to 9,200 acre-feet of water, roughly equivalent to 4,600 Olympic-sized swimming pools. By 4:30 in the morning on March 20th, the water level had climbed to within less than 3 inches of the 84-foot mandatory evacuation threshold. A level that triggers immediate action because anything beyond it starts pushing the dam toward its structural limits. By early morning, water was already pouring over the spillway at 1,500 gallons per second. At 5:35 a.m., Honolulu emergency officials issued the formal imminent dam failure notification. An alert went out, telling thousands of people to leave immediately. Still, people who were, in many cases, already trapped by floodwater on the only roads out of town. The dam is 660 feet long. It's an earthen structure. It was built in 1906 by the Waialua Agricultural Company to feed water into sugarcane plantations. It was rebuilt after it actually collapsed in 1921. And the state of Hawaii's own documentation says that Wahiawa Dam has high hazard potential, and that a failure will result in probable loss of human life. Those aren't my words. That is the official government position on this structure. So let me ask you something. If the government has known, in writing, that this dam could kill people, when did they find out? The answer is 1978. The US Army Corps of Engineers produced a report that year warning that the spillway was too small to handle what engineers call probable maximum precipitation. an extreme rainfall event that dam designers are supposed to prepare for. The spillway, according to that 1978 warning, is not large enough to safely manage the water volume that a worst-case storm could send through. That report is now 48 years old. The spillway, according to Civil Beat's investigation published the morning of March 20th, remains largely unchanged. The dam has been owned by the Dole Food Company. Since 2009, the state sent Dole 4 separate notices of deficiency about the dam's condition. 5 years ago, the state fined Dole $20,000 for failing to address safety deficiencies on time. $20,000. To put that number in perspective, since 2023 alone, Dole's parent company has paid out a total of $92.4 million in dividends to shareholders, according to SEC filings reviewed by Civil Beat. The fine and the dividend figure don't automatically prove a corporate decision was made to prioritize one over the other. But the gap between them does make it harder to accept the argument that the repairs simply couldn't be funded. What happened next is where it gets complicated. Rather than being forced to repair the dam, Dole proposed handing it to the state, essentially donating the problem to taxpayers in exchange for an agreement that the state would pay for the repairs. The Hawaii legislature approved the acquisition in 2023. The state worked out a schedule. Demolition of the dam was notionally pushed past July 2026, and the upgrades still hadn't been made. So on the morning of March 20th, when the water rose to 85 feet, just 3 feet below the crest, Dole had a portable barrier in place that extended the dam to 90 feet. That barrier, a temporary fix, was the only thing standing between billions of gallons of water and the towns below. The water peaked, then slowly began to fall. By late Friday, levels had receded enough that the imminent failure warning was eventually downgraded. But overnight, rain pushed levels back up again. The dam held. This time. A local farmer named Max Breen described watching the water from his orchard in the hills above Mokulea and trying to calculate where it would go if the dam gave way. "I don't know if it will force a wave just through town, through the path of least resistance," he said, "or if it will also rush through the ditch system and destroy everything in that path as well." That uncertainty, that moment of standing on a hillside trying to map where the disaster would flow, is what 2,500 people were living inside that morning. The last time a dam breached in Hawaii was 2006. The Ka-Loko Dam on Kauai collapsed and killed 7 people. The dam's owner faced 7 counts of manslaughter. That case is part of why the Wahiawa situation feels so loaded, because there was a precedent, there was a warning, and the dam still wasn't fixed. Hawaii's governor has now formally requested a presidential disaster declaration under the Stafford Act, which would unlock federal reimbursement for a significant share of recovery costs. The total estimated damage across both storms is over $1 billion. Airports, schools, then roads, homes, and a hospital in Kula on Maui. Farms statewide have reported more than $15 million in agricultural losses. Oahu farmers alone suffered over $2.7 million in crop damage. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs has approved nearly $4 million in disaster aid specifically for native Hawaiian households. And FEMA assessments are underway across all counties. The Oahu resident Melanie Lee returned to her home on Monday and stood in front of it for the first time since the flood. She and her family had lived there for nearly 20 years. "We lost everything," she told CBS News. "My children's pictures, just real sentimental stuff. Now it's like, where do we go from here?" That question is hanging over thousands of families right now. And as the state begins the long process of assessing damage and rebuilding, the Wahiawa Dam is still there, still not fully upgraded, still holding 9,200 acre-feet of water above communities that would have very little warning if it ever fails, for real. The question isn't just how Hawaii recovers from this disaster. It's whether the dam will be fixed before the next storm that pushes water levels to 85 feet again, and whether that storm gives them 3 feet of margin or less. We will keep following this story as the disaster declaration moves through Washington and recovery efforts take shape across the islands. Drop a comment below. I want to hear what you think should happen with the Wahiawa Dam. This is Crisis Alert Live, and this story is not finished.